was being laughed at by Republicans in Pennsylvania. What's the case, honest to goodness, to be made for re-election? Because President Obama can't seem to even.
Right.
He just wants to attack our guy.
No, you're getting all of the desperation moves from Obama right now. Of course, I've sort of cut them off at the path at their main desperation move, which is to engage in racial bullying and, imaginary racists on the Republican side. Now it's only the very, very stupidest hosts on MSNBC who try to pull that. For the rest of them know, not only do I have my book out there, but I'm sitting at home waiting for a call. And I will be in a TV studio within the hour if they start calling something racist. Although seriously, Ed Schultz and Chris Matthews are still doing it as stupidest hosts. But so now they're going after the women. Apparently, I didn't know this, Republicans are going to redefine rape and take away contraception. And by the way, I think most people, even if they believed that, wouldn't care. Just get us some jobs.
Maybe a job at a contraception factory.
Right.
So what about, I asked you this on the show this week. You being a woman and one of the most vocal on our side, tell me, does this work? You spend a lot of time with other women, liberal and conservative. Is this working? This whole line of war on women, the polls don't seem to suggest it's working.
No, the polls don't, and I watch all the presidential debates. I have to watch alone at Command Central. I can't miss anything, and send out very important tweets. But the vice presidential debate, I figured that doesn't really matter anyway. It's just going to be fun. I watched that at the party. So with my focus group, I wasn't really interested in what the boys at the focus group said, but there were 3 gals there. And we all were so turned off by Joe Biden, that fake laughing and longing. It's like, the biggest jackass you've ever heard. Men probably already did. You're a little ahead of us there. And Romney has been so magnificent in these debates, and I will say there was one lonely voice in the wind during the primaries telling you to support Romney. I want you to hang on my debates. He's like an intellectual ward cleaver. There is nothing frightening about Romney. He's a kind, gentle, he exudes decency. He's been married to this lovely Ann Romney. I don't know if you saw this week that Obama pulled his signature move, unearthing sealed divorce records. Something I wrote about 3 books back in Guilty. That's how Obama became a senator. First, David Axelrod, there it is, Guilty. First, David Axelrod, and the New York Times did trace both of them back to Axelrod. This isn't, my imagination. The New York Times had this, of course, after the election had been run. First, Obama was running against Blair Hull, very wealthy investment banker, in the Democratic primary. Hull was way out in front of the polls, and I think it's Chicago Tribune, whichever one Axelrod used to work for, goes and unseals sealed divorce records. And I'm not a lawyer, but yes I am. What is the point of putting divorce records under seal if a newspaper could just show up in court and say, we think there could be something interesting in here. Could you unseal them, please? But time again, that's what happened. Okay, so Blair Hull gets knocked out, Obama wins the Democratic primary, then he was running against Jack Ryan. I don't know if any of you remember him. He could be the one running for president now. Very successful, handsome, Dartmouth, Harvard Business School, Goldman Sachs, made hundreds of millions of dollars, leaves Goldman Sachs so he can teach at an inner city school in Chicago, really serious Catholic. He wins the Republican primary, so this is who Obama has to beat to become a senator now. Except, unfortunately, Jack Ryan had been divorced. And for any of you young people thinking of running for office as a Republican, do not marry a wacko. You're married to the cyborg from Star Trek, Voyager, Jerry something or other. And he had already released his divorce records. This was the custody records that neither Jerry Ryan and Jack Ryan, neither parent wanted the records released because it was custody papers over their child who was autistic. in the custody papers, but of course, fly out to California, to Chicago Tribune, we think there could be something interesting in here. Could you release them, please, Judge? The judge releases them. And it came out that Jerry, who had committed adultery on Jack, said the reason she was driven to adultery was he took her to sex clubs in New York and Paris. So only a Republican could have a sex scandal where he propositions his wife, she says no, and he takes no for an answer.
Heterosexual sex scandal with that.
Yes.
How about that?
So he's not telling Obama ends up running against Alan Keyes. I mean, I love Alan Keyes, but I could win an election sooner than he could, and I should not be running for any office. So that's how he became senator. I've been joking this whole campaign. Trying to get the sealed divorce records on Mitt Romney, Mr. Mormon, whose roughest drink is a chocolate milk. And today, they sealed divorce records of the CEO of Staples because Romney had testified as to the value of Staples stock.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken, Romney said, release them. Go ahead.
No, and everyone who's looked, I mean, this is typical Gloria Allred, do something to help the Democrats but screw my client. Remember, she did this with Meg Whitman. She exposes that Meg Whitman had used an illegal alien housekeeper, but by doing so, the illegal alien housekeeper had to be deported. So, screw my clients. This helped the Democrats. She has just done the same thing to the CEO's wife, who, from the papers, what we find out is the wife is a total wacko. She keeps suing, she keeps losing all of her suits. Every court has thrown these endless lawsuits out. But anyway, there's the signature move, more desperation from the Obama campaign.
Today it was released, Obama did an interview with Rolling Stone, and this was interesting because earlier in the week, I brought this up. The New York Times over the weekend wrote this, I don't know if they were trying to be derogatory, probably so, calling Romney a Boy Scout. He says, gee golly, heck, gosh darn.
I think that's so cute.
And how charming it is, I think. But then now we've got a president that's confident, or happy to throw out there, and excuse my language, but this is the president of the United States that said it, bullshitter.
Yes.
That's what he called Mitt Romney. And
he was quoting imaginary, what was it, 6 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
He was giving an interview with Rolling Stone magazine and said, that's my demographic, I'm very popular with kids aged 6 to 10. Because, they have a sense, they can look at a guy and see, he's a bullshitter. You know what the 6 to 10-year-olds who talk that way? No, but our president does.
My point is, how much does character matter here? I mean, the New York Times says, these peanut butter sandwiches, it says, gosh. Like that's something we shouldn't, aspire to in this country. And, we've got a president saying that word in Rolling Stone. I think that plays very poorly for President Trump.
I think so, and I love that Romney is a swear. I think it's adorable that he says things like gosh and hello, fellows. Because we do now have the hippest president we've ever had, and he's nearly wrecked the country. I think swear is very appealing.
Yes.
So you were early also, before there was only one other name that you really dug besides Mitt Romney, and that was the governor across the river in New Jersey, Chris Christie.
Yeah.
We thought for a while he might take him to Steve. I think Christie won the gig, frankly, but are you happy with the Romney-Ryan ticket, and would you have preferred it than Romney-Christie? Could that have even worked?
I was recently asked about my wild enthusiasm for Christie. And by the way, I supported Romney in 2008, and then Christie, and then came back to Romney. And Bill Maher asked me about it, and I said, oh, I just run off with a biker. I came back to a responsible choice. And Christie emailed me and said, biker? I think that's a dashing image. It's like James Dean. So I told him, no, you're going to be our closer. You're our Mariano Rivera. We're bringing you back in 2020 after 8 years of Romney-Ryan. You'll clean up.
Yeah.
The reason I said, as you watch see, they play it nightly. This was 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago now, I think. So this was when people still thought, Sarah Palin was going to run. There were the Ron Paul supporters, all these congressmen people were thinking about. So this was pretty far out. And the reason I said we had to run Christie, and if we didn't run Christie, it would be Romney and we'd lose, is because it's very hard to take out an incumbent. Republicans have done it one time, other than this year, in the last 100 years, and that was in 1980 when Reagan took out Jimmy Carter. It's very hard to take out an incumbent. Here you have the first black president, personally popular, and the media, the NFM, non-Fox media, is madly in love with him. So I just thought you needed a star like Chris Christie, and even if he didn't win, at least we'd have fun. But the economy just got worse. People saw what Obamacare was going to do, and within 6 or 8 months, I changed my mind and came back to the responsible choice, Romney. And I do think Romney is absolutely the best person we could run this time, precisely because of the dirty politics of the typical Obama campaign. Good luck getting something on Romney.
Really?
Try. I dare you.
Knock yourselves out. And I think it's exactly what the country needs right now. The country is going bankrupt. And even Ronald Reagan, and our greatest president, he ended the evil empire, he cut taxes, he gave us 20 years of peace and prosperity, but even Reagan didn't cut the size of government. That's what we need more than anything else right now, and I want the Bain Capital guy in there doing it.
There were a lot of people that suggested when Romney picked Ryan that, well, now there you go. Now we've made this about entitlements. Now we've made this a choice election. We should have gone with somebody milquetoast like Portman so that we didn't have this Ryan budget to kick around. It doesn't seem like this choice election narrative. That's exactly what it is. It seems like they're riding that all the way to the finish line.
Yes, I think the Ryan pick was brilliant. I've often written columns before, during a presidential campaign season, predicting the vice presidential choice of both the Republican and Democrat. Every single time I've been wrong. So I didn't bother this year, but that's part of the reason I supported Romney so strongly. He's a very smart man. He does things carefully, he does his homework, he works hard, and basically since he's become the nominee, I figured he doesn't really need my advice. And I was right. First when he picked Ryan, and then his performance in the debates. Both of them were magnificent. The reason I love Ryan is another Boy Scout. He's so sweet and earnest, though you must admit, from the vice presidential debate, he is not as good as Mitt Romney. He's just a congressman, so keep that in mind the next time we're choosing a presidential candidate. You really got to run a governor or a senator. No matter how much you like congressmen, they run in very small districts. Ryan may become as good as Mitt Romney. But they're both smart, they're both articulate. I love all Republicans, but a lot of Republicans in elective office are not articulate. This is like a miracle. Both the presidential and the vice presidential candidate are highly articulate Republicans. I can't remember when that's ever happened before. And as for the entitlements point, that was brilliant too. We lose on entitlements only when we can't get the message out. When they can run in some little congressional districts and show Paul Ryan pushing a little old lady off the cliff in the wheelchair. Whenever we can force people to listen to us for 30 seconds, we win. And by picking Ryan, it forced people to listen to us for 30 seconds. I mean, the Ryan plan, one thing that's striking is the Romney-Ryan plan does nothing to Medicare for people 55 years or older. So I don't know why the New York Times and on MSNBC they keep saying, oh, Ryan, that's going to hurt Romney in states with a lot of elderly people. Are we now considering 54-year-olds the elderly? It's not touched for anyone 55 unless you, the media, are planning on lying to people about it. And the other thing I don't understand is Republicans keep saying, at least talking heads on TV, that we have to save the entitlements for our grandchildren. Screw the grandchildren. We have to save it for anyone 45 years old or younger, for which Medicare and Social Security will be bankrupt.
Got to save it now.
Yes. And I think anyone would sign on to the Romney-Ryan plan at that point. It's only when they can show the pictures of Paul Ryan pushing a little old lady off the cliff in a wheelchair that they have an advantage on entitlements. Otherwise, we win.
There was a short-lived comedy show on Fox, and I believe the opening segment was Rush Limbaugh as president and you as vice president. I don't think it's a half bad idea, actually.
Really? Yes.
Hey, here's the thing. I'm getting some freaked out calls and out why, if you're a Senate candidate on our side, you can't answer rape and abortion yet. I don't know why. And memo, all of you running for office, have the answer ready on rape and abortion. This is a little hat tip from me to you. That being said, Aiken and Murdoch in Indiana, I don't think this is a deal. I don't think it's on the radar really, but what do you?
Murdoch's wasn't as bad as Aiken's, I think, but I completely agree. If you're running for office, you're not a minister, you're not a professor, you're not somebody chattering on radio. Just to say, yes, exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother. I mean, my point always is, if I get the other 2 million babies, yeah, okay, you can have 1,000. More cab drivers are killed every year in Chicago than that. Just have a quick answer. We don't want to have to get into theological arguments with lying liberals. But Murdoch all he was saying was, if a pregnancy results, the pregnancy was intended by God.
Yeah.
It's not quite as bad as Aiken's, and I really want to fly to Missouri and arrange an unfortunate hunting accident.
Shut that whole thing down? I think what he said, yeah?
No, don't talk about what happens to a woman's body after rape, and never, if you're running for office, use the word legitimate within 50 miles of rape. But, I mean, at least Murdoch was already the candidate. Who knows? If it's a landslide, we could end up winning Missouri. I think Murdoch still has a good chance, but yeah. I'm with Chris. If you're running for office, please do not get philosophical on the question of rape and incest and abortion.
So let's talk a little bit about the brand new book mug. I assume you all have your copy, yeah?
Oh, it's an excellent book.
How many of you already read it? You already read it? You show offs. I'm only halfway through.
You're gonna really love it.
Yeah. Well, the ladies in the View loved it. Did you see Ann Coulter on the View with the ladies in the View?
Yes.
Now, of course, you've written a book on race, which, for anyone on the left who happens to be black, the stock answer to your book, no matter whether they read it or not, is, what do you know about being black?
Well, that was Whoopi Goldberg's. It was funny because the producer of the video, and by the way, I love them. I wanted to kiss every one of those gals before leaving, because the rest of the mainstream media is pretending this book doesn't exist. This is the first book, including my first book, that I have not done a single morning TV show on any of the networks. And I gotta tell you, it's hard to sell a book without Matt Lowry having to fight with you. It's way easier when they turn you into some sort of monster. But no, I always say liberals can't learn. They can't learn that cutting taxes brings in more revenue to the treasury. They can't learn that sucking up the terrorists is not a good idea. They apparently can learn that attacking Ann Coulter sells more of her books. And learned it for this book. So I love the gals on The View, but the producer of The View, she'd actually read the book, and she had all these really interesting, thoughtful questions. She hands cards to each of the gals on The View. And they just threw them over their shoulders. and it was actually a fantastic interview because they were asking me all the questions, the most ignorant person out there might ask, i.e. everything the New York Times believes. But the New York Times won't argue with me. So they have more balls than the New York Times. And, Whoopi said, what do you know about being black? So I set her straight, saying this is not a book about what it feels like to be black. It's barely a book about black people at all. It's about white liberals and how they use and abuse black people for political advantage. And to the great detriment of black Americans, which is why I don't want to give away the ending, but this is sort of the crucial turning point in the middle of the book. It starts with a lot of, I love reading about crime. It starts with a whole series of mostly crime stories from the 70s and 80s, the golden era of racial demagoguery, where every time a black was accused of a crime, huge story, it was always Emmett Till, he's innocent, we have the Klan on the New York City police force, and then the truth would come out and, oh well, maybe he was guilty, but the only way you'd know he was guilty was that you'd stop reading about that story in the paper anymore. There would never be the admission. Black kid gets shot by white cop, always the Klan on the police force, and again, the only way you find, well, he wasn't looking at the cop. Undercover cop, is you can never read about the case again. They wait a few months and then bring up the same myth again. But my argument is, after this horror of liberals demagoguing the race issue and everyone walking on eggshells and really creating this great gulf between the races, we ironically had a turning point with the OJ verdicts. So I go through the LA riots, the Rodney King tape, many things you may not know about it, and then the OJ verdicts. And I think at that moment, 10:03, October 3rd, 1995, when a majority black jury acquitted an obviously guilty black celebrity and blacks across America cheered, white America said, that's it, the white guilt bank is shut down. We're done, hope OJ was worth it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to black people, because liberals in the media, in Hollywood, and academia had been encouraging the worst behavior among black people while never celebrating black heroes. You learn about a lot of black heroes you've never heard about in my book, the ones who ran out and saved Reginald Denny in the LA riots. One of my favorite ones is in the middle of the LA riots, and not just from the LA riots, from a lot of these stories, was a black minister in South Central LA. He had been a pimp, became a Christian, became a minister. He saw what was going on in the LA riots, and he went running out, and he saved an Hispanic man's life. They pulled the rioters had pulled his pants down, painted his testicles black, they were wailing on him, he was unconscious, and this black minister ran out, yelled at them to stop. When they couldn't stop, he threw himself on the Hispanic's body and said, you're going to have to kill me if you're going to kill him. Saved his life, they became great friends. Why isn't there a Hollywood movie made about that guy? That one of a very destructive white guilt suddenly vanishing with the OJ verdict. You had all these wonderful things. Relations between the races were much more comfortable after that. White people weren't terrified. They innocently say something like apartment, which Ms. Matthews has identified as a racist word now, which is funny because I never even knew I was black.
You have one.
And I live in an apartment. Yeah, that was his argument. Black people live in apartments. I never knew. But it went away and good things happened, and then the end of the book is how Obama's candidacy brought it all back. So that's the overview of the book.
We've come to a pretty remarkable place, have we not? When not even too long ago, the president was caught on a tape, I think it was at a church service of some kind maybe, talking about Katrina. And this was something Senator McCaskill in Missouri said once about George W. Bush. George Bush and Katrina don't let black people die. We've really come to an exceptional place when anyone accepts that as the reality in this country, regardless of their politics. You know?
No, I know, and this is what, I mean, forget Obama saying it, this is what white liberals have been saying for 30 years, I mean, in large part to make up for the Democratic Party's really terrible history on race relations in this country. They were constantly on the side of segregation, Jim Crow, of lynchings, of the KKK for 100 years, for all, I mean, before that, on slavery, and that's why I think they were making up for it in the 70s and 80s, and to some extent now, by play acting civil rights heroes. But if they were going to be, civil rights heroes, somebody else had to be the designated racist. And that's usually some poor Irish cop from Queens who isn't racist. Wow, we could have used all of that enthusiasm for racial harmony back when the real civil rights struggle was going on. But yeah, they like creating a mess and lying about things and making things much, much worse. They pretended to care about black people for about 5 minutes and then started using the label of civil rights to push things having absolutely nothing to do with civil rights. Abortion on demand, homeless rights, animal rights. That's one I have in the book. Peter Singer at Princeton has actually compared the struggle for animal liberation to the struggle for black liberation. Yeah, there's a liberal for you.
I think, Ann, where the Democrats are now starting to cannibalize themselves is they have been setting these tribal fights up for a very long time, and now you have gays, and you have Hispanics, and you have women, and you have blacks, and all these disenfranchised groups the Democrats have been building up for so long as the poor group being picked upon and
right.
They're now growing and finding themselves, it seems to be, at odds inside their own party.
Oh yes, this is why, Republicans, there's always a point made about Republicans that you're not reaching out to this or that group. But, well, A, we generally are, but Republicans stand for freedom, small government, a small national defense. We think that's an appealing, and life. We think that's an appealing argument. Democrats divide people, come up with you're in this group, and the Republicans hate you. That's their argument. So no, we don't really have a particular program that's very different for blacks than for whites, than for women, than for gays. It is, we'll get the economy going, we won't take half your money in taxes, we'll defend the country, and we'll defend life.
I have it. Ann Coulter, if you guys have questions for